Good evening. Welcome to the regular scheduled meeting of the Stanley County Board of Commissioners. It is a little bit different tonight. I'm humbled to welcome you all to the newly named Gene McIntyre County Commissioner Meeting Room. We had that little ceremony with his wife Sue just a few minutes before 5, or a few minutes after 5 tonight, and she was humbled and very appreciative of what the honor that Gene got, and I think it's very, very befitting to name this room after a man that spent almost 20 or a little over 20 years here. So with that, I will ask Commissioner Lawhon to ask the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
If you would like to join me, please bow your head. Father, we do thank you for this another day of life and the opportunities that it brings. We thank you that we live in a country that is free and that we get to participate in voting and electing officials. We just pray that as we go through the election tomorrow and days ahead, we just pray that your will would be done and that you would lead the leaders of our country, our state, and our county. Forgive us where we fail you. Be with those families that have lost loved ones, especially those that have lost loved ones to COVID-19. Just be with us during this meeting and let us make those wise decisions. In Christ's name, amen. You'll join me in the pledge.
Thank you, Commissioner Lawhon. Are there any additions or adjustments to tonight's agenda? Not, we'll seek a motion to approve. So moved. Motion from Commissioner Allman, a second from Commissioner Jordan to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. Motion to carry 7-0. Item number 1 tonight is going to be a Senior Services Advisory Board appointment. Ms. Weemhoff.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. We have 4 of our advisory board members whose term is expiring. They are Dr. J.C. Boone, who lives in Albemarle, Don Morrison, who lives in Norwood, Elizabeth Hill in Albemarle, and Phyllis Smith, who lives in Stanfield. Our advisory board bylaws state that board members can be reappointed with the commissioner and can serve for 3-year terms for an unlimited number of terms. And all 4 of these board members have agreed to serve our department for another term. So I'll respectfully request that these 4 board members be reappointed to this advisory board.
Thank you, Ms. Weemhoff. Are there any questions from board members?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request that Dr. J.C. Boone, Don Morrison, Elizabeth Hill, Phyllis Smith be reappointed to the Senior Service Advisory Board for an additional 3-year term that would end October 30th, 2023.
Motion to appoint Dr. Boone, Don Morrison, Elizabeth Hill, and Phyllis Smith from Commissioner Lawhon, a second, I think Commissioner Furr. Is there any discussion on those appointments?
Just a comment. Ms. Becky, please pass our thanks on to them for serving and for continuing to serve. There's
Okay.
A lot of these boards are very hard to fill, and it's a burden off of us when people will volunteer to be reappointed to serve a second time. That's
Okay.
It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't mention that all 4 of these members bring a lot of experience with aging and with working with the public, and so thank you. It makes a good board. So thank you. You know he's welcome.
All right, there's a motion and a second on the table. No other discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Motion will carry 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wimhoff. Have a good evening. Item number 2 on tonight's agenda is the Town of Norwood ABC Board appointment. County Manager Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You have the expiring term of Mr. McSwain, and it actually expires at the end of December, and they're asking for a representative to serve that 3-year term ending 2023. Mr. McSwain has agreed to serve if reappointed. There are 2 additional volunteer applications on file, which are included in your packet. And so the action requested is to either reappoint Mr. McSwain or one of the other applicants in your packet. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Manager Lucas. Is there any questions from the board?
The ABC board will makes policy related to the ABC store in Norwood, policies related to the store, and also disbursement of funds to different. And by statute, there's specific things that have to be used for substance abuse treatment and law enforcement, things of that nature. But they make those. That board is involved in that decision-making process.
Mr. Lucas, I didn't
Yes.
see it on here, but how many people is on this board? How many members are on the board?
If I recall, is it 3? 3. Yeah, there's one representative you all appoint. The others are, I believe, appointed by the town council of Norwood.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint James L. McSwain to the Norwood ABC Board.
A motion from Commissioner Almond to appoint James L. McSwain to the ABC Board, Norwood. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Lawhon. Is there any discussion on that appointment? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 3 tonight is going to be a discussion on the Farm Bureau Livestock Arena. Ms. Lori Ivy.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and staff. I have a short PowerPoint presentation. Some of this is a repeat from when we met last September, and some of it's new information. First, I want to recognize, I know Sandy Hatley is one of our Arena Project Steering Committee members. Reggie Medlin, I don't see him, he was supposed, is Reggie here? Okay. And Reggie Medlin. But these are the folks who've served on this committee for some time now, since the inception of the livestock arena. So why build an arena? And we've talked about this before, but I know we have some in the audience that may not have seen this, or online that may have not have seen this, but agriculture is certainly an economic engine for our county. The Stanley County Farm Bureau Livestock Arena would attract events and individuals from other counties, making it more of a regional event center. If we look at agritourism, there's really no other facility in our region that would be similar to the proposed arena. Some of the potential uses, most of you know, we do a 3rd grade field trip for students in public, private, and homeschool called Ag Awareness Days, pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID. Livestock and horse shows, which we currently host pre-COVID and post-COVID. Ag demonstrations, hands-on workshops with animals, plants, and soils. Skills USA at the high school and community college. Civic, political, and religious activities. Art exhibits and performing arts activities. Archery, private and family functions. So if we go back and start looking at our fundraising, even though we actually have been talking about the livestock arena since November 2010, we didn't start our fundraising until January 2014. But at that time, Stanley County Farm Bureau pledged $250,000, and the Stanley County Cattlemen's Association made a payment of $10,000. To date, we have $2,823,669.90 in total pledges. That amount does reflect a loss of grant funds in the amount of $200,000, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And those are donations from $25 to $100,000, which were made from businesses, associations, farms, and individuals. We have received the following grants: a $10,000 grant from William Coltrane and Norma Kraft Cannon Charitable Trust, $150,000 from the Cannon Foundation, and then $200,000 from the Ag Development Trust Fund, which is a part of the North Carolina Department of Ag and Consumer Services. That was a 2-year grant. We asked for a 1-year extension, and that grant did expire in September of 2020. So we feel like moving forward, if we do move forward, that we will have access to some of those funds that we can reapply for. Those were for equipment only, not for the construction of the facility. And then government pledges. The County of Stanley initially made the $250,000 and then came back in September 2019 with an additional $1.5 million, and the state of North Carolina, we've received $175,000. So the project, in July of 18, we put it out to bid, and we were estimating in the area of $1.5 million in working with our architect. I lost the words there for a minute. And when the bids came in, they all exceeded $3.4 million. September 19 is when we made our presentation to you at the Agri-Civic Center, and that's when you pledged an additional $1.5 million if additional funds could be secured within a year's time frame. In March, we applied for the North Carolina Tobacco Trust Fund grant. It was due March 6th. In July, late June, they came back and had lots of questions, so we felt really good about it. We submitted those responses to them by the July date. Felt confident our grant application was, one that might receive funding, and we received word in October that we did not receive funding, and we had applied for $500,000. October 2020, we met as a steering committee to discuss kind of what our options were, and we decided we needed your feedback and input about the $1.5 million commitment. And so moving forward, in addition to applying for the Tobacco Trust Fund grant, we have also contacted January, February, early March. We made a list of businesses and individuals that we thought might be potential donors and prepared packets for them and made one-on-one visits with 10 to 20 different individuals and businesses. Certainly, the COVID pandemic put a halt to that, and we had hoped to circle back before June 30th with those companies to see if they were interested in either a memory or honor board or making a different donation to the arena. So we're kind of still on hold with that given the current fiscal environment. Tonight we need to determine first, if the additional $1.5 million that you pledged, if that's still in place. And then the other thing that the steering committee talked about was, could we put it out to build in a different format as a design build, and Andy's going to talk a little bit about that because that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think, we have some options that we could potentially go to the design build route. We've already actually designed it, but if you had a design build route, you enter into that contract for a not to exceed amount. And given that the design work's already done, whoever the general contractor is that we would hire to do the design build would already have those plans. So obviously that wouldn't be part of their cost, because those would, they may have some cost there to go back through them and look at them and try to figure out where they may be able to shave some things. But that may be a way of doing it and getting it done cheaper. I don't know that to be the fact. I mean, obviously, if you go the design bid build route, which is what we started with, because we had initially engaged a local architect, and then we had to kind of move a different direction, but got the designs done and put it out to public bid, and then the bids came back in at $3.4 million, and they all were within $350,000 of each other, but the low bid was 3.4, and so we could certainly put it back out to bid again from the public perspective, and you could end up with the lowest bid. Based on conversations we've had with folks in the construction industry, we're not quite sure that will come back significantly lower than the 3.4. But the design build option may allow the general contractor some more flexibility to get creative in some of the way they construct it, and can find ways to lean on the subs, and it may lend to some innovation and some cost savings. I'm just not sure. So that's an option too, is to sort of say, okay, well, let's move forward with a design build and put out an RFP, and to general contractors, and hire a general contractor via the design build method, and see if that, if we can potentially get it built for close to $3 million, which, we're pretty close to that at 2.9 million in pledges to date. So I think the first step is to know whether the 1.5 additional money is still there and it's still committed, or whether the board wants to back up with that. Obviously, you've got a capital improvement plan, which includes this facility. It includes hangars at the airport. It includes 911 center, and so, and I'm sure there's, if you go down that list that you worked in February, there's even more county facilities, sheriff's office, and some other things. But if you look at your sort of year one and year two projects, you talked about this project, you talked about the airport hangars, you talked about the 911 center. So there, you've got, there certainly are things that you guys are looking at. And have said these are all important projects that we need to work on. So I think the first question is the 1.5 still there? And then the second question would be, do we want to try a different construction method and see if that maybe we can get it done in that $3 million range? And we probably would still need to come back to you and say, okay, if we can get a contract for $3 million, would you close the gap if we can't raise that $100,000 in the community? So.
And we do feel confident that, if we do move forward, we've heard from several farmers, individuals that have said, I want to pledge, but I didn't know the project was still ongoing. So we feel like if we do break ground, we will be able to secure additional dollars, because our goal was to sell 100 of the honor memory boards, which are $2,500.
Any questions from board members?
Thank you, Ms. Lori and Andy. One comment and I guess two questions. I work in the construction field myself, and I think if we were to go right now, even if you had all $3.4 million and went to a contractor and said, please build this, he'd laugh you out of the room. Because if it cost $3.4 million last year, it cost $5.5 million this year. Building materials have skyrocketed, sometimes 150%, minimum 50 to 60%. Raw construction materials are up over 400%. 2x4 that was $2.50 is now $8. 4x4 posts are now $45 a piece, not $11.75. So it will not get any cheaper right now, and those costs probably won't come down anytime soon, regardless of how we did it. But I would still be personally willing to help go along with that. That's just life. It's not your fault. It's not the county's fault. It's just what materials have done due to COVID. And this should be coming back down in a few more months, we hope. But so here's pardon the bluntness of this question. How much money have you raised since last year? You needed $500,000 the last time that we met. How many dollars have you
I didn't,
got?
Not that much, but just a few, donations, small
Not
donations.
a significant amount.
Yeah.
And when you think by the time they got mobilized from that September meeting, and you get through the holidays,
Yeah.
COVID.
We had,
So it wasn't, they really haven't had the ability to do a whole lot of fundraising. And, I think a lot of people are sitting, the uncertainty, people are sitting and saying, I just can't make a pledge at this point. I just don't know what the future holds.
Well, I've heard that from people that have said, well, have, so-and-so told us they would pledge if they knew it was on and they had the money.
Well,
This is a catch-22 that
Yeah.
we're not gonna bank. I mean, go get the money and then we'll have it. I mean,
Right.
we
Well,
cut
and
$1.5 million check and
We
offered
have-
to, and they've done nothing.
Yeah, we have done that. We collected some, I know I personally picked up two $2,500 checks after we had a stakeholders meeting in December, much like what we did for commissioners to provide the update. I know there were others that came in, but it wasn't, $100,000. And we sat down staff, Dosha, Swearingen and myself and Caitlin, we sat down and made a list and we went knocking on doors. So, that took place January, February, early March, and then everything shut down. So we started our fundraising efforts in addition to grant writing really after the first of the year.
And I spoke to Dosha and some people, because I've stayed on top of this about every few months and checked in. And, I asked questions like, hey, are you, remember that $1.5 million, it expires. Have you made any progress towards securing the last 25% of it? And the answer is always, no.
Yeah. Well, we did grant writing. I worked about 60 hours on the grant. So I know there were things that were done. Did it come to fruition? A lot of it has not, but it's not that we haven't worked on it. So we have
There
done
were
some
some
work.
fairly healthy donors that would normally donate to something like this in Stanley that were never asked until today when I asked them. They've commented. I've never even solicited.
Well,
We would love to have their names.
Yeah,
because
that's,
That's what we
certainly.
did for the stakeholders. We tried to identify, when we did the stakeholder dinner in December, we tried to identify potential donors. And, the steering committee, we kind of brainstormed, my staff, and then we invited those folks to the dinner, and that's where two of our donations, the ones that I picked up, came actually from that dinner. So, we have done that. So if you know of folks who are interested, we certainly will approach them. It's not that we don't want to approach them, we just don't know who they are.
Or we'll let you approach them if that's the best person to make the ask. A lot of times it's not.
I don't personally know them. I know people that do. So I said, well, I can't believe nobody's called these people. And we started making calls today, and they were quite offended. And quite frankly, they hadn't been called, and the answer was no.
Yeah. It's a fairly large group. Obviously, this is not necessarily a staff-driven. It was a community-driven process. When you look at that list, there were a lot of, fairly prominent folks on there in the agricultural community, and they were brainstorming different people. But you don't necessarily generate a holistic list of everybody, and so I think that's why we were relying on their connections with other people in the community and whoever else knew about the project to say, hey, has this person been asked, so that we can broaden that list of potential folks that we need to be approaching for the project. So
We did do a large mailing. It's probably been a year and a half to 2 years. We identified lots of different mailing lists from all the ag agencies at the Ag Center and did a mailing to 400 to 600 farm families. So we've tried different avenues of things. So we're certainly open to suggestions.
I think the best this committee could ask for at this point in time would be the board to say, we understand COVID and we understand that potentially has limited your fundraising efforts, and giving them another year to see where they're at 12 months from now, keeping that funding commitment. I think, and I don't want to speak on behalf of that group, but as county manager, I would think that that would make them at least give them some idea that, hey, we have that certainty, we've got another year, let's get back to the drawing board and let's start this. But part of it's going to be how quickly our economy starts to get rolling again, so that folks feel comfortable writing that check. But I
have no problem going for another year. But if I voted yes to go another year, it would be with the absolute understanding that I would not vote yes another time. Because if somebody gives you $1.5 million and says your only job is to go collect the last 25% of it, somebody'd be on the phone every single day until I had it. And I certainly wouldn't have come back, well, I got $5,000. I don't know, I know it's hard, but if you had $300,000 or $350,000, but if you your goal was the remaining 500,000 and you came back with 5,000, I take it that nobody seriously wants to see that arena built, and we just put the money somewhere else.
Yeah. And like
I would love to support it one more year, and I would. I do know COVID has hurt a lot of people, a lot of businesses, but COVID affects the whole world, and the world's still going on just like it did.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, I know Lori, and certainly Lori was the driver behind that. I mean, spent a lot of time putting that grant together, and then obviously the follow-up conversations and follow-up information. So, yeah, could there have been more effort? Certainly. I mean, there's, but there was a tremendous amount of effort that was put forward to try to secure that $500,000. I'm not going to make excuses or say anything. I certainly understand your point. So, I mean, I guess at this point, it's really, if the community wants to see this thing happen, the community's going to have to step up and put the $500,000 there.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to keep the $1.5 million commitment in place and to utilize the design build construction method.
Motion to maintain the commitment of $1.5 million in addition to the original 250, right?
Yeah, to make for the total of 1.75. That's right. When part of that 250 you've spent, because we've spent money on the design of the building, so you've spent $65,000 to $80,000. I want to say somewhere in that range.
In addition to prior commitments, $1.5 million.
Right.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Wait. Is that for additional year?
Yes, sir.
One additional year.
For additional year.
There's a second from Commissioner Furr. Is there any discussion on the motion? $1.5 million for one additional year from tonight.
And likely we wouldn't do the design build piece of this yet. We would wait and see if the funding gets in place, because we don't want to engage somebody if we don't have the money to build it. So, but we certainly, if that's the direction of the board, once it's there, we would come back to you and say, this is the design, this is the construction method we think we should utilize.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please say, Ashley? Commissioner Morgan? Yeah, I think so.
I'm just going to make a statement before we vote, and I voted against the 1.5 million last time because I think it was more than, I'm for the Agri-Civic Center program, but I'm not for the additional money. I think it's better used with other projects in the county that we have. So I just want to explain why I'm voting no again. It's not that I'm not in favor of the project. I am in favor of the project. I just not the amount, not the 1.5 million. I wanted less money, but I just wanted to make that statement.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Now, is there any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you, Ms. Ivy.
Thank you.
Item number 4. Sorry, hit my mic button too much. Item number 4 on tonight's agenda is a debt refinancing proposal. Before County Manager Lucas presents, I do have a request from Commissioner Lawhon to recuse himself from discussion and vote due to a conflict of interest. Is there a motion to recuse Mr. Lawhon? Motion from Commissioner Allman and a second from Commissioner Jordan. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0. All right, County Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Toby is here this evening as well in case there are questions I'm not able to answer. But at the board's October 5th meeting, we presented to consolidate and refinance 4 existing loans. And the gross savings at that time was almost $1.1 million over the life of the loans, and the net present value was about $891,000. The board directed staff to contact each of those financial institutions and evaluate the potential for savings associated with rate reductions, which we've done, and that information's in your packet. Each of those rate reduction proposals with the gross savings over the life of the loan. The total cost to do just simply the rate reductions would be $5,500. A couple of the banks had fees to do the rate reductions. As a means of comparison, the staff has updated the refinancing and debt consolidation proposal. Given the changes in the market and the volatility in the market as a result of what's going on with not only COVID, but primarily the election and the volatility that we're seeing in the market around the uncertainty of what may come of that election. The total cost of refinancing would be $27,000, slightly lower than last time. And the reason for that is that we're looking at consolidation of three loans. We're recommending that the Truist loan, the Truist came back with a rate reduction coming down from 2.69 to 1.54, so 115 basis points. So we're recommending that we move forward with that rate reduction and that we consolidate and refinance the other three loans to maximize the savings for the county. And the other benefit of that is it will reduce the existing EMS-based loan from 19 years to 14 years as a result of this financing. The information you see in there, the refinancing consolidation, the indicative rates ranged from 1.64% to 1.7%. We used 1.7 in the analysis just to be conservative. And I just will say that the market continues to be volatile. If the board goes ahead and goes along with staff's recommendation and gives it a favorable vote this evening, we'll move as quickly as we can. And obviously, you all control if it comes back and we don't get the savings we want, we don't have to move forward with the debt consolidation. We could then, potentially look for rate reductions if the market still bears that. So we're asking for that consideration this evening. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Again, Toby's here as well. He may be able to answer questions I don't have. And so that's we're considering moving forward with the rate reduction with Truist and contracting with FHN Financial and Bond Counsel to refinance and consolidate the remaining three loans. With the hopes of getting the savings of about $578,000 on that, and then there's roughly $358,000 on the rate for the rate reduction for Truist. So you're close to $900,000 if we can get all the financing done at the rates we think we can.
Thank you, County Manager Lucas. Are there questions from the board?
Andy, this was the guy who presented the last meeting.
Chris was here last time. Yeah, he was with FHN Financial. He's a financial analyst and would be working on our behalf to do all of he'd have to write the proposal to send to the banks, the formal proposal to get them to do the merger and the consolidation of that, and then he would work with the LGC to get that approved.
That $27,000 is his fee.
No, it's not all his fee. Roughly $7,500 of that is bond counsel.
Okay. The balance of that's his fee.
Yeah, and that would be yes, that's correct. And then that would come out of the proceeds from the debt service, the refinancing.
Andy, we went back with his 1.55% number when all our local banks and pretty much said, here's what we've been offered, what can you guys do? And they came back with this.
Yeah, well, we went back to each of the banks and said, what can you do in terms of a rate reduction? I mean, it's not a refinance, it's just a simply rate reduction. If we have to refinance, it'd be more expensive because then you're going to have to get bond counsel involved and all that. So these banks were just simply doing a rate reduction. Some of them still were going to charge us a fee because there was some transactionary stuff, not all of them to do that. But those rate reductions are reflective in the first spreadsheet you see after the agenda cover sheet. And you can see what each of the banks decided to reduce their rate. One of them reduced it 10 basis points all the way down to Truist that reduced theirs 115 basis points.
You're saying we move all three to the first round?
What I'm recommending is we do the rate reduction with Truist and that the other three with Pinnacle, URI, and First Bank, that we actually engage FHN Financial and Bond Counsel to merge and consolidate those loans and put it out to bid to refinance that all as one package. And the indicative range of the rates that we would get for that would be they range from 1.64 to 1.7.
Okay.
on the to consolidate and merge those other 3 loans into one loan. And what that would do is also what we've looked at is reducing our EMS loan, which was a 20-year loan. We've made one payment, it's 19. It would get it down to a 14-year loan. So you would reduce your
Save money, save interest, and shave 6 years off that loan.
5 years. It would shave 5 years off the loan. That's correct. And again, they would bring back a proposal from these banks, and if we felt like it wasn't generating the savings we want, we don't have to do it. I think Chris answered that last time.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ullman.
I'd like to make a motion to approve moving forward with a rate reduction for Truist Bank loan and contracting with FHN Financial, Bond Council to refinance and consolidate the remaining 3 loans.
Motion to do the rate reduction with Truist Bank and refinance?
Refinance and consolidate and refinance.
Consolidate and
the other 3.
refinance the remaining 3 loans, Pinnacle, Uwari, and First Bank. That motion is from Commissioner Allman, a second from Commissioner Barbie. Is there discussion on that? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, no. I'm actually going to vote no on that, but, so that motion will carry 5-1 tonight.
And I will say that all those local banks will have the opportunity to bid on that once we put that together and say, what was the rate you would give for this consolidated and merged debt? All those Pinnacle, Uwari, and First Bank would be approached to say what would they do it for from a bid proposal. So they'll get a chance to secure that larger loan if they so choose.
Item number 5 on tonight's agenda is again County Manager Lucas, Animal Control Ordinance Update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In your packet is the changes. They're reflected in, and actually at your dais this evening, there were a couple minor changes, nothing substantive, that were made after consultation with the sheriff after we put it in your agenda packet. So at your dais should have been an updated one. I think there, correct me if I'm wrong, Jenny, I think there was some additional. What were the additional changes?
There was a change to the rabies section to make sure it reflected current state law.
Okay.
And a change to add the APS coordinator so that she or he would have authority to dispose of impounded animals. The way we had it originally drafted was just the APS sergeant, but now the APS sergeant or the coordinator would have that authority to make those decisions regarding impounded animals.
So just probably for Ashley's benefit, since he's on the phone, he may not be able to hear what Jenny said, but it was what's different from what's at the dais versus what's in your packet is just an updated language related to the rabies to make sure it reflects the most recent law in North Carolina, and then giving the APS coordinator that's at the facility some control over the process for adoptions and also for when dogs may need to be, cats may need to be euthanized.
Mr. Morgan, were you able to hear all that? All right.
The majority of the other changes are simply moving the authority from the health director to the sheriff and moving appeals from, they used to go to the Health and Human Services Board. We're proposing an internal staff board made up of the county manager, the health and human services director, and the emergency management director to hear any appeals that folks may have from a sheriff's decision. That's really the only changes that were made throughout the document. We didn't necessarily change anything else to the meat of the ordinance.
Any questions for the county manager?
Is this pretty standard does it match up other counties that have the sheriff's office over animal control?
I know we looked at the animal control ordinance in Cabarrus County. When we first initially did this ordinance, I mean, we looked at lots of counties' ordinances, Cabarrus, Unions, other counties that either were under a sheriff or weren't under a sheriff. So we've tried to, I think the ordinance in general is fairly consistent. I know Cabarrus's is different than this one because we thought about the fact that we want to undo the whole ordinance, but that process took a lot of time. And it was, and Tommy was on the Board of Health and Human Services, or maybe he wasn't, his wife was. That process of getting that animal control ordinance adopted was a lengthy process, and there were a lot of people in this room providing comments. So what we did not want to do is undo that and have to start from scratch. We wanted to just really just take the authority and move it from the health department to the sheriff so that we were concerned that opening that back up could, again, it was a long process that took a lot of energy.
Most of this just changes the word health director to APS, or for sheriff, and animal control to APS. There's a few new things, but.
The sheriff has reviewed this. He looked at it. Health director looked at it. Obviously, Jenny's gone through it extensively. The new coordinator individual who used to work in Cabarrus County has looked at it and provided feedback. So we feel like we've been intentional in trying to get as much feedback on it in terms of making these changes to match up with what we're going to do moving forward.
Any other questions for the county manager? No, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Allman.
make a motion to approve the recommended amendments to the Animal Protective Services ordinance.
Motion to approve the Animal Protective Services ordinance as recommended and amended. There's a second. Second from Commissioner Furr. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, no. Motion will carry 7-0. Item number 6 on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. Any questions or concerns with the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve by Commissioner Lawhon. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Furr. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Is anybody here tonight for public comment? No? Board comments. We'll start with Commissioner Lawhon.
Tomorrow's a big day. Get out and vote if you haven't voted. Hopefully we'll have the right candidate selected. Thank you.
Commissioner Jordan.
I'm gonna stay quiet for a change.
Wow. Commissioner Barbie.
Ditto, Commissioner Lawhorn. Please get out and vote tomorrow, and let's make our vote count. Thank you.
Mr. Furr.
No comment.
Commissioner Allman.
I want to amen Bill's comment.
Commissioner Morgan.
No comment.
And I do not have a comment either. We will seek a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn from Commissioner Jordan. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Furr. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0.